Alrighty, so today we're driving the new Audi S5, the B9 variant. So for a while in my life I was the biggest Audi fanboy. I had about 4 Audis in a row, and I still deep down love Audi cars. So I always enjoy driving, particularly these modern ones, to see how they've transformed over time. And of course, just like the S4, the S5 now has the all-alloy turbocharged engine in it instead of the supercharged engine of the previous generation. What's interesting about the horsepower is that it's now producing exactly the same horsepower as the S5 of 10 years ago, the V8 S5, which made a glorious sound. In this engine, you actually see it in a lot of Audi products. And I think people's biggest criticism is that it doesn't sound so great. And this particular car has one modification to it, and that is an exhaust modification to try and improve that sound. So I'm kind of interested to listen to this car, and it does have a little bit more tone to it. The exhaust modification is called the AWE switch path, and it's supposed to be a little louder in sport mode than in drive mode, but I really can't tell the difference. Let me demonstrate. Here's drive mode. I'll slow down again, I'll put it in sport mode. I don't know. Sounds the same to me. But regardless of this, it is an improvement to the stock exhaust in this car. It's not too loud, it's not too drony, it just gives you a little bit more beef to the exhaust, which this car definitely needed. So occasionally with the S5, there's a little bit of model confusion for some people. Some people think the S5 is Audi's sport model. And in some ways it is, but really it's a midpoint model. It's between the RS5 and the A5, same as the RS4 and the A4. The S4 is between those two. So this is really competing with the likes of the 440 BMW and say the C43 Mercedes, and maybe the Infiniti, that red line model. So it's more of a midpoint model. But what's interesting about this generation of S5 and S4 is that it has definitely moved more to the luxury side than the sporty side of the equation. What I'm talking about, and the exhaust is just one example of this, where they've really toned down the exhaust from the previous generation, but they've toned down a lot of things about this car. Obviously there's more power, but everything else is more luxury orientated. For example, the steering. The steering is super light and lovely to drive, lovely to cruise in, but there's no feel to the steering. It's definitely more the luxury side of the steering. Same with the transmission. They've dropped the option for a manual transmission, and now it's just a regular torque converter automatic. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but this shifts so quickly, I'll show you. Almost as quickly as a dual clutch transmission, but definitely a smoother transmission than a dual clutch transmission. And of course the suspension. Even in dynamic mode, this car is a lot softer than the previous generation. It soaks up the bumps nicely, it's super smooth, but it's not exactly flat on the road. So this car is definitely much more a luxury car than a sports car compared to the previous generation. And I think that's a reflection of the market that Audi are trying to sell to. They're trying to sell to people that are looking for more luxury than more sport. Although they still dress it up as a sporty car, underneath it's really much more of a luxury car. And what I find really interesting is that the base model, the A5, or the A4 if you're getting the 4-door model, actually has a few features or options that are more sportier than this model. For example, you can get the A5 with a manual transmission, and it comes standard with a dual clutch transmission instead of a torque converter transmission. And also, obviously it's a little lighter with that 4-cylinder engine, and strangely it comes with more options for colors. There's still plenty of colors in the S range, but the S range I think drops some of Audi's prettiest colors. But don't get me wrong, this is still a phenomenally beautiful car to drive. And I love what Audi have done with the exterior and with this interior. The gauges are really cool. I love how the boost gauge moves backwards and forwards. And this optional big LED screen can be configured to different modes. The interior is a lovely place, and I think far superior than the BMW 440. The Mercedes is more glitzy on the inside. This is more toned down, but I do love these modern Audi interiors. They're so well thought out and so pretty. Okay, since we're here, we might as well do a little drag race against my car. Okay, 3, 2, 1, Go. Look at that, my Porsche wins a race. Yeah, for once my Porsche wins a race and I'm not in it. Well, it's to be expected. The Porsche has, 100 horsepower on this car. But that's not to say the S5 is sluggish. It's not. It's got plenty of balls. Let me demonstrate. Heaps of pickup there. It is such a lovely car to drive, but not quite as sporty as I think some people might think for an S model car. So here we are back at my place, have a quick look around the interior and the exterior. To differentiate this from the base model, the A5, you get a lot more chrome on the outside, and particularly around the front grille, which I like now. You know, they're starting to tone down that Audi front grille, which I've never been much of a fan of, and the Audis are starting to get their good looks back on the front again. And around the wheels you see the red calipers. The brakes on the S model aren't that different than the A model. They're slightly bigger on the front end, but the same size on the back. And round at the rear, you can see the tips from that upgraded exhaust, and into the trunk, which is quite cavernous. And popping around inside here, and when you get in the car, it hands you the seatbelt. Anyone that's owned an E93 BMW will recognize that little arm. Hopefully this one lasts better than the BMW one did. They only seem to last about 25,000 miles before they broke. So that's pretty cool. But the interior is a lovely place. Boy, these seats are so comfortable. The leather's so nice, and Audi interiors, I don't know, maybe not everyone's taste, but for me, I think they are class leading. A little different than the Mercedes. Some people prefer the Mercedes, the glitzier look of the Mercedes, but I like the lower, more subtle tones of the Audi interiors. Really very pretty inside. And in the back seat, even though there isn't a lot of leg room, there's still plenty of room for two gorillas back there. And over on the AC controls, you get the OLED displays showing you what temperature, and the buttons are double way buttons. You can press them up and down. Just very clear, very pretty controls in this car. The seats are pretty supportive. They're not too hugging. Once again, this car is more about comfort than sport, and the seats certainly reflect that as well. Very comfortable seats, including a little button down here, which turns on the massage feature. I'm always a big fan of the massage seats, even if there's no option for a happy ending. Just a beautiful, smooth machine, this S5. I really enjoy driving it. With plenty of power, I could drive this car all day long.